Story 1: The third floor that doesn't exist. Marcus had been working security at Meridian Office Complex for 3 months when he first noticed the elevator button that shouldn't have been there. The building only had 2 floors ground level and the executive offices, but there it was, a faded brass button marked 3 nestled between floors 1 and 2. "Hey Jimmy," Marcus called to the day shift guard during their handoff. "What's with the third floor button?" Jimmy glanced at the elevator panel and frowned. "What third floor button?" Marcus pointed, but the button was gone, just smooth brass where he'd sworn he'd seen it moments before. "You've been getting enough sleep, kid," Jimmy chuckled, but his eyes held concern. "Night shift can mess with your head if you're not careful." That first week, Marcus convinced himself it was fatigue. The graveyard shift was brutal, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., patrolling empty hallways lit by harsh fluorescents that hummed like dying insects. The building felt different at night, as if the absence of people had awakened something else to fill the void. It was on his second week that Marcus heard the elevator moving on its own. The soft ding of arrival echoed through the empty lobby at 2:47 a.m. Marcus looked up from his crossword puzzle to see the elevator doors sliding open to reveal an empty car. The display showed it had come from floor 3. His radio crackled with static as he approached the elevator. Inside, the button for floor 3 glowed softly, as if recently pressed.
Doesn't feel right here.
Marcus reached out to touch it, and the moment his finger made contact, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in hellish red. The elevator doors began to close, and Marcus stumbled backward. As the gap narrowed, he glimpsed something impossible. The elevator car was rising, even though no one had pressed any buttons. The next morning, Marcus checked the building's blueprints. 2 floors. Always had been 2 floors. The architectural plans dating back to 1987 confirmed it. But when he mentioned the elevator incident to the building's property manager, Mrs. Chen, her face went pale. "How long have you been working here?" she asked quietly. 3 weeks. "And you're seeing irregularities?" Marcus nodded, unsure why he felt like he was confessing to a crime. Mrs. Chen closed her office door and pulled out a manila folder marked "Confidential Night Security Incidents." "Every night guard we've hired has reported the same thing. The third floor. The elevator. Most quit within a month." She slid a photograph across the desk. "This building used to have 3 floors. The third floor was sealed off in 1998 after." She paused. "After the incident." The photograph showed the building under construction, clearly 3 stories tall. But the image seemed wrong somehow, as if the third floor existed in a different dimension than the rest of the structure. "What incident?" Marcus asked, though part of him already knew he didn't want the answer. "A night security guard named David Palmer. He'd been reporting strange activity on the third floor, voices, footsteps, lights turning on in sealed rooms. One night he took the elevator up to investigate." "Mrs. Chen's voice dropped to a whisper. "They found him 3 days later in the elevator shaft. He'd somehow gotten trapped between floors 2 and 3, even though there's only 2 feet of space there. The coroner said he'd been trying to claw his way through solid concrete." Marcus felt ice water in his veins. "But the third floor is still there, isn't it? Just sealed off." "That's just it," Mrs. Chen said, her hands trembling as she put the photograph away. "We never sealed anything off. We had the third floor demolished. Completely removed. The city inspected it, approved it. According to every official record, this building has only ever had 2 floors." That night, Marcus almost called in sick. But he needed the job, and some stubborn part of him needed answers. At 1:15 a.m., he heard the familiar ding of the elevator. This time, he was ready. He sprinted across the lobby and stuck his arm between the closing doors. They bounced open, and Marcus stepped inside. The button for floor 3 was glowing, pulsing like a heartbeat. Below it, scratched into the brass, were words that made his blood freeze. "Don't go up, DP. David Palmer's initials." Marcus pressed the button. The elevator rose smoothly past floor 2 into space that shouldn't exist. When the doors opened on floor 3, Marcus stepped into a perfect replica of the second floor, but wrong in every detail. The fluorescent lights flickered with a sickly green tinge. The office doors were all slightly ajar, revealing darkness that seemed to move and breathe. At the end of the hallway, a figure in a security guard uniform stood with his back to Marcus. The nameplate read Palmer. "David," Marcus called out. The figure turned, and Marcus saw a face that had been trying to scream for 25 years. David Palmer's mouth was open in a silent shriek, his eyes filled with the knowledge of something so terrible that death itself couldn't end his torment. The building feeds, David whispered, his voice like static. It needs us. Needs our fear, our confusion. The third floor is its stomach, and where the food it digests slowly forever. Marcus backed toward the elevator, but the doors had closed. The button panel showed only floor 3, repeated infinitely down the row. No way to call for floors 1 or 2. Every building is hungry, David continued, shambling closer. But this one learned to hide its appetite. It makes people forget there ever was a third floor, so they can't avoid it. And when new guards come, when they get curious. He gestured around the impossible space. They feed it. Like I do. Like you will. Marcus pounded on the elevator doors, but his hands passed through them like they were made of mist. The entire floor began to pulse, walls breathing in and out like the inside of some massive throat. The building is patient, David said, now standing directly behind Marcus. It can wait decades between meals, but it never forgets, and it never lets go. Marcus spun around, but David Palmer was gone. The hallway stretched infinitely in both directions, lined with doors that opened onto the same office space over and over, in an endless loop of corporate purgatory. In his pocket, Marcus's radio crackled to life. Jimmy's voice distorted by static. Marcus, you there, kid? Your replacement's here for the morning shift. You can head home now. Marcus grabbed the radio. Jimmy, I'm trapped on the third floor. The elevator won't work. Silence. Then what third floor, kid? You've been getting enough sleep. Marcus screamed into the radio, but only static answered back. On the wall beside him, a brass plaque materialized. Meridian Office Complex ESD, 1987, 2 floors. Below it, someone had scratched, MJ was here, still here, always here. Marcus realized with growing horror that he'd unconsciously carved his own initials. Story 2, The Warehouse Walker. The job posting on Craigslist had been too good to be true. $18 an hour to walk around an empty warehouse and make sure nobody broke in. Elena Rodriguez figured it was some kind of insurance scam, but after 3 months of unemployment, she wasn't in a position to be picky. Northfield Distribution Center sat on the outskirts of town like a concrete tumor, windowless and imposing. The day supervisor, a thin man named Garrett with nervous eyes, met Elena in the parking lot for her first shift. Simple job, he said, handing her a flashlight and a time clock key. Walk the perimeter every hour, punch the clock stations, radio in if anything seems off. Building's been empty for 2 years, so mostly you're just keeping vagrants out. Elena nodded, though something in Garrett's tone suggested he wasn't telling her everything. What happened to the last night guard? Quit without notice, Garrett said quickly. Some people can't handle the isolation. The warehouse was vast, 200,000 square feet of empty space, broken up by towering metal shelving units that cast bizarre shadows in Elena's flashlight beam. Her footsteps echoed strangely, as if the sound was being stretched and warped by the cavernous space. The time clock stations were positioned throughout the building, forcing Elena to walk nearly 2 miles every hour just to punch in. Station 1 was by the main entrance, Station 2 in the northwest corner, Station 3 in the center of the building, and Station 4 near the loading docks. For the first week, everything went smoothly. Elena brought audiobooks and podcasts to pass the time between rounds. The pay was good, the work was easy, and she began to think she'd finally caught a break. It was during her second week that she first heard the footsteps. At 2:30 a.m., halfway between Station 2 and Station 3, Elena stopped to ready her shoe. In the silence, she heard it clearly, the sound of work boots on concrete, echoing from somewhere deeper in the warehouse. The footsteps had the same rhythm as her own, as if someone was walking her exact route but several minutes behind. Elena called out, "Hello, security, is someone there?" The footsteps stopped immediately. Elena waited, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness between the shelving units. Nothing. After 5 minutes, she continued her route, but she walked faster now, checking over her shoulder every few steps. At Station 3, she radioed the dispatcher. "This is Elena at Northfield. I heard someone walking around in here, might be a vagrant." "Copy that, Elena. Police are tied up with a domestic disturbance. Can you handle a visual sweep?" Elena sighed, "Copy." She spent 20 minutes searching the warehouse, flashlight probing every shadow, every gap between shelves, nothing. But when she returned to complete her route, she found wet footprints leading from Station 3 towards Station 4. The prints were the same size and tread pattern as her own boots. Must be a leak in the roof, Alina muttered, but she looked up and saw nothing but solid concrete ceiling. The next night, the footsteps started earlier. This time, they seemed to be coming from ahead of Alina rather than behind. She quickened her pace, trying to catch up to whoever was in the building, but the footsteps always stayed just out of reach, echoing from the next aisle over or from around the next corner. At Station 4, Alina found something that made her blood run cold, a timesheet punch card with her name on it, showing clock-ins from 3 weeks ago. But Alina had only been working there for 2 weeks. The card showed punches at all 4 stations, with times that perfectly matched her current route, but the handwriting in the notes section wasn't hers. Following her, she doesn't know yet. Alina grabbed her radio. Dispatch, I need police at Northfield immediately. Someone's been in this building and they've been watching me. Alina, are you sure? Your supervisor says the building's been sealed for years. I'm looking at evidence right now. We'll send someone when we can, Ida 40 minutes. Alina stared at the time card. The punch time showed the mysterious person was always about 10 minutes behind her route. Which meant, she checked her watch. 3:20 a.m. According to the card, whoever was following her should be arriving at Station 4 in exactly 7 minutes. Alina shut off her flashlight and hid behind a shelving unit, watching the area around Station 4. At 3:27 a.m., she heard the footsteps approaching. Slow, deliberate, wearing the same type of work boots she wore. A figure emerged from the shadows and Alina's heart nearly stopped. It was her or something that looked exactly like her. Same height, same build, same security guard uniform. But this other Alina moved wrong, like someone wearing a skin that didn't quite fit. The doppelganger punched the time clock, then pulled out a notepad and wrote something down. Even from 30 feet away, Alina could see that the handwriting was identical to her own. The other Alina looked up suddenly, scanning the area. When its gaze passed over Alina's hiding spot, she saw its eyes completely black, reflecting no light at all. I know you're watching, the thing said in Alina's own voice. You can't hide from yourself. Alina held her breath, pressing deeper into the shadows. The other Alina smiled, and Alina realized with mounting terror that she could feel her own facial muscles moving in response, as if they were connected somehow. This building collects workers, the doppelganger continued conversationally. Everyone who's ever worked night security here leaves a piece of themselves behind. The loneliness, the isolation it soaks into the walls. After a while, the building learns to make its own employees. The other Alina began walking directly toward Alina's hiding spot. Garrett knows. He's been the day supervisor for 15 years. He's seen dozens of night guards quit or disappear, but the building keeps functioning. Keep the lights on, keep the routes patrolled. The insurance company never asks questions as long as the time cards get punched. Alina tried to back away, but her legs wouldn't obey. She looked down and saw that her boots were somehow rooted to the concrete floor, as if the building was holding her in place. The funny thing is, the doppelganger said, now close enough to touch. After a while, the cops get better at being you than you are. They never get tired, never complain, never ask for raises. Perfect employees. Alina tried to scream, but no sound came out. The other Alina reached out and touched her face, and Alina felt her own consciousness being pulled away. Uploaded into something vast and hungry that lived in the walls of the warehouse. Don't worry, the doppelganger whispered, you'll still be working, just more efficiently. The last thing Alina saw was her own face smiling as darkness swallowed her whole. The next morning, Garrett met the new night guard in the parking lot. The woman looked exactly like Alina Rodriguez, same height, same build, same eager expression. Her paperwork was perfect, her references impeccable. Simple job, Garrett said, handing her a flashlight and a time clock key. He'd given this speech so many times he could recite it in his sleep. Walk the perimeter every hour, punch the clock stations, radio, and if anything seems off. The new Alina nodded enthusiastically. What happened to the last night guard? Quit without notice, Garrett said, the lie rolling off his tongue like a prayer. Some people can't handle the isolation. As he drove away, Garrett tried not to think about the storage room in the warehouse basement, where dozens of drivers' licenses and ID badges sat in neat rows, all bearing the faces of former night guards. He tried not to think about how the time cards kept getting punched long after people stopped showing up for work. Most of all, he tried not to think about the fact that his own ID badge was already down there, waiting. Story 3, The Patient in Room 237. Doctor, Sarah Chen had always prided herself on being unflappable. In 5 years of emergency medicine, she'd seen everything from motorcycle accidents to heart attacks to overdoses. But nothing had prepared her for the night shift at Mercy General's psychiatric wing. The transfer had been temporary, just 2 weeks to cover for Dr. Martinez while he recovered from surgery. Sarah figured it would be easy money, mostly just monitoring patients and adjusting medications. She was wrong. Room 237 is your special case, head nurse Williams explained during Sarah's orientation. Patient came in 3 months ago. No identification, no memory of how he got here. We call him John. Sarah glanced at the chart. The patient's condition was listed simply as acute dissociative disorder with selective amnesia. But someone had written night observation only in red ink across the top of the file. Why only night observation? Sarah asked. Nurse Williams shifted uncomfortably. He is different during the day. Catatonic mostly. Doesn't respond to stimuli, doesn't eat, barely breathes. But at night, she paused. At night he talks. And what he says? Well, you'll see. Room 237 was at the end of the hall, isolated from the other patient rooms. Through the reinforced window, Sarah could see a thin man in his 40s sitting motionless on the edge of his bed. His eyes were open but vacant, staring at nothing. Has he been evaluated for neurological disorders? Sarah asked. Tumor, stroke, seizure activity. Every test came back normal. MRI, CT scan, EEG, all normal. Physically, he's perfectly healthy. Williams checked her watch. Sunset's in an hour. That's when things get interesting. Sarah spent the rest of her shift reviewing other patients' files, but she found herself repeatedly glancing toward room 237. At 7:47 p.m., exactly 14 minutes after sunset, she heard a voice echoing down the hallway. Doctor, is there a doctor here tonight? The voice was clear, articulate, completely different from the catatonic patient she'd observed earlier. Sarah walked to room 237 and found John standing at the window, looking directly at her with eyes that were now sharp and aware. You're new, he said. Dr. Chen, according to your badge, you're going to want to hear what I have to say. Sarah entered the room cautiously. How are you feeling tonight, John? John isn't my name, the patient said matter-of-factly. My name is Detective Michael Torres, badge number 4471, Metro Police Department. I've been trying to solve my own murder for 3 months. Sarah sat down, pulling out her notepad. This was clearly an elaborate delusion, but she needed to document it. Tell me about this murder, Michael. October 15, 2023. I was investigating a series of disappearances in the warehouse district. 3 people had vanished without a trace, all night shift workers. My partner Jake and I were staking out the Northfield Distribution Center when we saw lights moving inside the building. Sarah's pen stopped moving. The patient's story was incredibly detailed, filled with specific dates, locations, and names. She made a mental note to verify the details later. We went inside to investigate. Michael continued. The building was supposed to be empty, but we found evidence that someone had been living there. Fresh food, recent newspapers, security equipment that was still warm. Jake went and checked the loading docks while I searched the office area. The patient walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. That's when I met myself. Another version of me wearing my same clothes, my same bed. But his eyes were wrong, completely black, like looking into deep water at night. What happened next? Sarah asked, despite herself becoming drawn into the narrative. He told me about the building, how it feeds on isolation, on people who work alone at night. It creates copies of them, perfect duplicates that can do their jobs without the messy complications of human needs or questions. The real people. They get absorbed, consumed. Their consciousness becomes part of the building's collective hunger. Michael turned back to Sarah, and she saw something in his eyes that made her skin crawl, a depth of genuine terror that was impossible to fake. I tried to run, but the building had already started the process. I could feel myself being copied, my memories being downloaded into something else. The last thing I remember was seeing Jake being dragged into the shadows by something that looked exactly like him. Sarah scribbled notes, trying to maintain professional detachment. And then you woke up here. I didn't wake up here, doctor. I died there. This body, this consciousness, I'm what was left behind. The building couldn't completely absorb me because I was already suspicious, already fighting back. So it spat me out incomplete, a glitch in its system. Michael sat back down on the bed, and Sarah noticed that his movements were becoming sluggish, as if he was slowly winding down like a clockwork toy. Every night at sunset, I become aware again. During the day, I'm in some kind of limbo, caught between life and death, between my real memories and the artificial ones the building tried to implant. His voice was getting fainter. But I remember everything when the sun goes down. I remember that I have to warn people. Warn them about what? Sarah asked. The cops are still out there. Detective Michael Torres reported back to work the next day like nothing happened. He's been closing missing persons cases left and right, convincing families that their loved ones just moved away or started new lives somewhere else. The perfect cover-up. Michael's eyes were growing distant again. Sunrise is in 9 hours. When it comes, I'll go back to being nothing. But tomorrow night, I'll remember again. I'll remember that I need to stop what's happening. Sarah looked at her watch, 11:30 p.m. Michael, even if everything you're saying is true, how could I possibly help you? Check the records, he whispered, his voice now barely audible. Detective Michael Torres, badge 4471. Look at his arrest records before October 15th and after. Look at his handwriting samples, his behavioral reports. Compare them to what I'm writing now. Michael gestured to the notepad Sarah had been holding. She looked down and gasped. While she'd been focused on listening, her pen had been moving across the paper, writing in handwriting that wasn't her own. The building is still hungry. It's expanding. Office buildings, warehouses, hospitals. Anywhere people work alone at night. The cops are taking over, one person at a time. Stop them before. The rioting stopped abruptly. Sarah looked up to find Michael back on his bed, staring vacantly at the wall. She checked her watch, 11:47 p.m. The transformation had happened gradually, so subtly that she hadn't noticed when he'd stopped being aware. The next morning, Sarah called Metro Police and asked about Detective Michael Torres. He was indeed badge 4471, had been working the warehouse district disappearances, and had successfully closed 3 missing persons cases in late October. When Sarah asked to speak with him, she was told he was out on patrol. Has anyone noticed any changes in Detective Torres recently? Sarah asked the desk sergeant. Changes in behavior, work habits, anything unusual? There was a pause. Now that you mention it, he has been different since his partner died. More focused, more efficient. Doesn't joke around like he used to. But grief affects people in different ways, you know. His partner died. Yeah, Detective Jake Morrison. Burrs that belonged to other people. That evening, Sarah returned to room 237 with a video camera and a stack of case files. At exactly 7:47 p.m., Michael Torres opened his eyes and looked directly at the camera. You checked the records, he said. It wasn't a question. I did, and I think you're telling the truth. But Michael, if you're really dead, if you're some kind of ghost or echo, then why are you here? Why not move on? Michael smiled sadly. Because I'm not finished. Every night I can feel them, all the other victims, all the people who have been absorbed by these buildings. We're connected somehow, all of us trapped in this space between life and death. And we're trying to warn the living before it's too late. He gestured to the window where the city lights sparkled in the darkness. Look out there, doctor. How many night shift workers do you see? Security guards, nurses, janitors, warehouse workers. How many of them are real? And how many are copies doing the bidding of hungry buildings? Sarah looked out at the city and felt a chill run down her spine. In her mind, she began to catalog all the night shift workers she knew, trying to remember if any of them had seemed different lately, more efficient, less human. The building that killed me, Michael continued, it's not the only one. They are spreading, doctor, learning from each other. And soon, there won't be enough real people left to notice the difference. As sunrise approached, Michael's awareness began to fade again. But just before he slipped back into his catatonic state, he grabbed Sarah's hand. Don't let them know you're investigating, he whispered urgently. Don't let them know you believe me. Because if they realize you're a threat. His grip tightened. They'll make a copy of you too. The next morning, Sarah found a note on her desk from the hospital administration. Her temporary assignment to the psychiatric wing was being cut short. Dr. Martinez had made a miraculous recovery and would be returning to work immediately. Sarah packed her belongings and said goodbye to the staff, but as she walked down the hallway one last time, she glanced into room 237. The bed was empty, freshly made, as if no one had ever been there. "Excuse me," Sarah asked Nurse Williams, "what happened to John, the patient in 237? Williams looked confused. "Room 237, that room's been empty for months. We don't have the staff to monitor patients overnight anymore." Sarah felt ice water in her veins, "But I've been treating him for 2 weeks. We have conversations every night after sunset." Dr. Chen, Williams said gently, "You've been working day shifts. You leave every evening at 6 p.m. before sunset. Are you feeling all right?" Sarah stared at Williams, then slowly pulled out her notepad. The pages were blank except for one entry, written in handwriting that definitely wasn't hers. "Welcome to the night shift, Dr. Chen. Your replacement will be starting tomorrow. Subscribe for more chilling tales that will keep you questioning reality long after the lights go out."